Hello, Elizabeth, are you able to hear us? I think we allowed you to talk there for a second. But it does look like you're on mute at the moment, but I think that might be something you can adjust on your end. Okay. Okay, just so let you know when we do open it up for public comments, we will allow you to talk. And you can raise your hand if you do want to speak more. But we do have the email you sent in and it's at each of the counselor or the commissioners' chairs. Jeff, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Awesome.
Thanks for checking.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the June 4th, 2025 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission for the City of Manitou Springs. The purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission is to protect and enhance districts of historic significance and instill and foster civic pride in the legacy and achievements of the past, and to improve the economic vitality of the historic areas of the community through encouraging compatible rehabilitation of historic structures. The Historic Preservation Commission is responsible for reviewing plans for building in the historic district for architectural appropriateness and to ensure proposals meet the city's design guidelines, which are based on the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So we can get started tonight by introducing commissioners and planning staff, beginning with
Ann Nichols.
Matt Rose, Vice Chair.
And I'm Laura Kinseth, Chair, and staff, beginning with Fred.
For the record, Fred Rolandhagen, Planning Director.
For the record, Zachary Davison, Planner.
For the record, Erin Ringsred, Planner.
Thank you.
And this is Jeff Parker. I'm the city attorney. So
Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to the next item, which is the minutes from the May meeting.
So the reason there are not any meeting minutes in this packet is as part of working towards digital ADA compliance, we are needing to have those minutes reviewed by our city clerk's office to confirm that they are digitally compliant. This is somewhat of a new system that we're working through, so we just weren't quite ready with those for the meeting and the public notice or the packet on Friday. So you'll have those next month, but that's why they're not in there right now.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? No. And notice of council action?
Fred, did you want to maybe share about, I don't think it really impacts this body, but the stormwater code update?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about what was going on at least from the planning department's perspective. Yeah, probably it may not impact this commission very much, but the city council adopted on its first reading regulations to the stormwater code last night. Their second reading will be in 2 weeks. And so that I think there would be an impact if the stormwater code primarily applies to properties over 1 acre, but there are some things that could apply to properties less than 1 acre if you are if you're digging. So if you're applying for a grading and erosion control permit, and if somebody's in a historic district, they're digging and they have to apply for a grading and erosion control permit. The stormwater code could or might apply to them. Usually if you're redoing a structure or something like that, where an MCAC would be required for this board, the stormwater code would not apply.
Thank you. Unfinished business. Anyone? No? So we can move on to new business. And I will just explain that the order of proceedings for tonight's public hearing items is, first of all, staff presentation. Then commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then the applicant may make a statement. And commissioners can then again ask questions of the applicant. Then it will be open to public comment, which will include statements in favor, statements opposed, and an applicant rebuttal. Then public comment will be closed and followed by commissioners' discussion, a motion, and voting on the item. So, and any decision item by this commission may be appealed by city council or to the city council by filing a written notice of appeal to the city clerk's office within 10 calendar days of the decision. And do any commissioners have an ex parte or conflict of interest to declare for this item? Okay. We can move on to MCAC 2505 High Street.
Thank you. MCAC 2505 is a new residential construction at 0 High Street. We have Rolf Jacobson with us today. The request is to build a new single-family residence on an undeveloped lot. Some of the details of this request: there will be 728 square foot of living space, 968 square foot of total building footprint, 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Will be made of natural materials, with the outside being vertical plywood siding and batten detailing. It'll have a rooftop deck, 4 off-street parking spaces along the property frontage, and a building height of 17 feet and 4 inches from grade to the top of the deck railing on the roof. The property is zoned general residential, and the vacant lot is in the Midland Historic Subdistrict. Here is, it's moving a little slow. Here is an overview of the site, outlined in red. It is across the street from the church and next to the Manitou Cottages. And here are the site plans. This would be the front entrance and kind of angled down, showing a bit of the rooftop deck. Here are some more 3D renderings. On this, the rear porch isn't going to be built. On the original plans, the rear porch was going to be what was shown in beyond the setbacks. And it was decided that it would be removed instead of seeking a variance to allow it. When it was originally proposed, there was some confusion between Manitou Springs Code and Colorado Springs Code. Colorado Springs allows building decks into a setback under a certain height, which we don't allow. So on these plans, this rear deck is not being proposed for approval. And here are some side scales. And this is a top down. It is kind of hard to see. It's gotten a little blurry with me zooming in, but you can see the 3 vehicles there along the front of the property. You can see a little more of the rear deck going into or beyond the setbacks allowed in the general residential zone. It will sit kind of offset from the property, which I'll get to in a second. And here are some existing conditions. This would be a view from Pawnee looking onward down High Street. This is just a view of the lot itself. It's currently being used as kind of like a pay to park lot. And this is a view looking towards Pawnee. And then one more just a little further away. And we did receive one public comment regarding the MCAC. And they are with us online today. But the primary concerns regarding the MCAC were damage to the fence that is being currently happening from pay to park patrons, retaining wall failure. There was a request for more information regarding the vehicle parking on that, or the proposed parking along the front of that property, and how it might, impact her retaining wall or in the structure of the retaining wall. There were concerns about the rooftop deck and privacy, looking onto their property or in visibility into their windows. And there were some concerns about the removal of any vegetation in the property itself. A lot of those trees are well established, and there were concerns about removing them, and which also circles back to privacy concerns as well. For MCAC 25, if we can approve the MCAC with conditions, deny the MCAC, or postpone the MCAC until July 2nd, 2025 for further consideration. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff?
Yes. First of all, what are we reviewing in this context?
Would you get a little closer to the microphone?
sorry.
Sorry.
What are we reviewing and being asked to
We're-
evaluate? Because if this property, because this property is already approved by planning or building department?
No, we're approving the, I guess, the aesthetics,
Yeah, so just to kind of give some context for you in the audience, this is the first step in the approval process whenever it's a historic property where it's brand new construction specifically, but really for anybody that's doing work in a historic district and it qualifies for an MCAC per Title 17. So when that happens and it's brand new construction, the property and that structure is automatically deemed like new residential, which under the design guidelines, then we review it against those design guidelines. In the staff report, it outlined each of those guidelines that apply to this property and what information was provided by the applicant to show what they're doing relative to that guideline. The checklist also showed whether they believe it's applicable and whether they believe they're complying with it or not. And so that's what's being reviewed. Without approval from HPC tonight, it can't go to the next step of a minor site plan or PPRBD. Those all come after. And when it does go to each of those steps, we're still reviewing it against the MCAC as approved. So if it was approved tonight and they decided to change a window, then we couldn't approve it at minor site plan either, because we'd have to bring it back to you and approve the plans as they go through the full process to PPRBD. So we can't approve something different at PPRBD than what you see today.
Okay. So given the comments from a neighboring property, how do we evaluate that?
So tonight you're reviewing building envelope, materials, and like the massing and location within the lot. Some of the concerns and from this applicant are centered around things that we would review as part of a grading and erosion control plan to make sure that there's no adverse impacts to adjacent properties. So I think one of the only items within there that would be within like your purview is the rooftop deck, whether that's something that complies with HPC design guidelines in chapter 17 or not. So that's as I see it. If commissioners interpret it differently, I'm open to that interpretation.
Okay, thanks.
And maybe just to follow up a bit there, Aaron, the same would be true in terms of whether or not any trees are going to be removed. Is that a planning commission? Or does anybody have really oversight on that?
I'd have to review it specifically in the code. Most of the time when I'm reviewing tree removals, it's on the city's behalf on city property. And I'm not often doing it on residential. So I'd have to double check that, but it wouldn't be in chapter 17. It would be in another chapter.
It's not an HPC issue, if it's an issue at all for the city. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there are requirements that if a tree is removed, that there is a certain size that has to be put in its place. So they do have to do, I forget the wording, the verbiage, but they do have to evaluate the size of a tree and then its replacement or multiple replacements are held against that.
But again, planning commission or staff, not us, right?
Correct, yes.
Right.
Okay. Any more questions for staff? Okay, I will now ask the applicant to come forward, please, and give us your name and address.
Hello. My name is Rolf Jacobson and I live at 631 Manitou Avenue. It's also known as the Governor's House. You can actually see it from here. It's right across the street, across from the American Legion. And I'm from Manitou, lived here for off and on for 60 years now. Product of Manitou School Districts, class of 1981, without honors. And my kids have also gone there and just recently graduated there. I've owned my current house for 25 years now. And it's, as you know, it's very close to here. It's the house with the piano in front, the pink house, okay? And it was built in 1880. And it's one of the oldest houses in the whole city. There's very few that are actually older than it. And I hope I've continued the legacy of that, of the house. I've spent a lot of time, effort, money, blood to make it a jewel on Manitou Avenue. I think I've done that. And behind my house is a vacant lot, and that is on High Street. And that is where I want to build my very small, reasonably priced home for rental purposes. The square footage is, 728 feet, so it is quite small. It sits on only 17% of the lot. Currently, it is very underutilized space that has parking on it only. I want to transform it into a high quality home to help out the housing crisis, obviously, we have in this town. The exterior look uses a very simple look, and it blends extremely well with historic districts. This type of design is seen all over the state in infill lots in older established neighborhoods. This look is used in Boulder, Denver, Old Colorado City, Old North End, Grand Junction, dozens of other cities around the state. It blends in with other historical older buildings next to it and has been successful in many areas. My proposed house will be next to my residence. which is 145 years old. Historic preservation and proper new development is extremely important to me. And I actually am living by keeping Manitou a visually interesting, historic looking and vibrant place to live. This new construction will add much needed affordable housing, repurpose an underutilized and blighted lot, be a great neighbor to the surrounding historic buildings. And I ask for your support.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant? Matt, would you like to go ahead?
I do. Hi. I'm so happy to meet you because I always enjoy people playing your piano. I do have a question. You made some comments about the board and batten siding, the appearance of the property. It's very plain. Maybe in contrast to some of the other homes on High Street there's some of the scallops siding up in the peaks. Why were you choosing to not have any ornamentation on it? Because it would be the peak that faces High Street. So I'm just curious about that, because it would almost look like a shed, an outbuilding for your house or the one next to it from High Street.
Right. This type of modern, sleek design is very, very common in urban areas. You go anywhere, you see it next to very historic buildings. So I'm not trying to do a faux old look, and especially the cheap faux look. I think that's the worst look. So it is gonna, that's why it's gonna be sleek and modern. And, I actually think it looks very good instead of trying to match a historic building, and you can't really match that. So going the other way, it fits in really well in infill situations. And that's where they're built everywhere, these modern type planar buildings. So.
I can understand that. I mean, and the divided light or the mullions you have in your windows, I think adds some character that is less modern and sort of bridges that. I think it's just big contrast to what's there. And I understand what you're saying about more urban, like bringing some urbanization into it. I think it's a great idea to use that lot. I just wonder, I mean, I think what we're supposed to be reviewing is how it fits in context of Manitou.
The neighbor directly east of that lot is just some very affordable housing, flat roofed apartments.
Yeah.
Just put up very modestly 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
And so that's my neighbor. And that's where I'm going to be hugging up against is their parking lot. I'm only going to be 4 feet away from there. The other building towards west, I'm going to be completely away from them. So there is no visual between those two properties. In fact, that property is very close to my property line, and I'm going to be a long ways away from them. And also there's a row of trees there. There's going to be no trees cut down at all in this. 0 trees cut down. There will be none needed to be cut down. So it will be closer to the apartment complex next to it, which is definitely not historic looking and definitely run down and is a parking lot by itself. And so it's not, it's that way. It is different. So.
And why did you choose to not have any windows on the end that would be facing the street?
That can be added. It's not a problem. It's just for that one bedroom. It's going lengthwise because
Yes.
the lot is long.
Yes.
So most of the windows are going to be going east and west.
Yeah, that would be a south facing window then, right?
Yes.
That's all I have for right now.
Could I just interrupt for a minute and ask you to put the renderings back up? So we have actually, this I didn't print out the packet.
And Commissioner Wright joined during the applicant's comment testimony, just for the record.
Did you have a comment?
No, I
Yeah,
thought it would be helpful if we could
Right. Am I in your way?
see
Maybe-
the renderings again. I
Right.
mean, in general, I
Maybe
guess my,
maybe the 3D renderings, the diagonals.
And I think just for clarity, Zach, correct me if I'm incorrect in this. Would you go back to the previous one that had the 3 axons on it? The image in the bottom, sorry. Or no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Oh yeah, so the image in the bottom left corner, that face that you see on the far left, that would be the side facing the street. And then in that image, where you see the small deck structure, that would be facing the east, to just kind of help orient. Where access is being granted to the rooftop deck, that is on the west side. So that's the west facade.
That's the biggest area of the lot going to the west. That's almost double of the size, the width of the building. So that's a big area between the building and the neighbor to the west. So, and it's quite small building. My builder has built a bunch of these on the west side of Colorado Springs. In fact, I built one at 2430 West Kiowa. They allow ADUs in Colorado Springs, and I built one already. So I already know what it looks like, and I think it's absolutely jewel. I've owned a lot of old houses, and I own another one on the west side, right up from Meadow Muffins there. And I built one exactly like this there in a very historic, the 2400 blocks of Kiowa, which is the heart of old Colorado City. It's behind the library there. Close. So I understand that it has to blend in well, and it does. And when you drive around other neighborhoods around the state of Colorado, you see empty lots with buildings built like this now. First of all, the cost is on such a small lot. I can't build too much. I can't overbuild, and I'm underbuilding here. And I'm not asking for any variances at all. That's why we're not going to have that little back deck. Not changing of the height, not asking anything at all. In fact, underbuilding for this site that I could possibly do. So it would be pretty hidden away. And I think it would be a tremendous improvement driving on High Street, going to the church there. You will see a very sharp, new residence there. Up, better than what it is right now. So that is my plan.
Okay, thank you. Did you?
and I'll guess my only comment is I think what we look at is if it's compatible for the sub-district that it's in. And the Midland sub-district is very eclectic, as you pointed out. It has probably every variety of architecture you could find. So I'm not concerned. We don't want people to mimic like historic styles. That's not what we're after. We're after, does it fit in? And I think the fact that it's a fair distance from the west boundary from the the house on Pawnee is important. And even though we don't rule on this, I think the fact that you're not cutting any of the big trees helpful to know as well. So those are my comments at the moment.
Okay, did you have any?
I apologize, I was late. I thought we started at 6. I haven't been here for a little bit. One of the biggest things about the historic districts is when we see construction, even jutting out sections, we try to break up the mass and see how you have 2 sides that have nothing. And even if you put one window, one little type of window, that kind of breaks that up. And that mimics nicely the area. It doesn't have to be on both sides. It just, at the time, there was a lot of those porches that they were using for, the tuberculosis porches. So you'll see a lot of that kind of eclectic architecture. But so we don't make them put windows on everything, but we try to get them to break up those masses. So I was just encouraging maybe something. I think you did a great job on the planning of the use of the land. I can't even imagine how you got that figured out, but you did a great job of that. But I was just wanting to ask you if that's a possibility.
It absolutely is. And the building I built on the west side has windows on the ends in the bedrooms. I put windows on the ends and on the back. So those bedrooms have a lot of windows, and I was just thinking maybe reduce it, especially on the back side where it's up against that parking lot and the cottages next door. But on the end unit too, I could definitely consider putting windows in there, and it might look better. So it would look more finished, I think, too. So I concur on that.
I think it would soften it.
It would.
And even with the middle section is kind of just a box with a deck on top.
Correct.
So if there's, I think, whatever could be done to soften and warm up the building to the neighborhood would be important. What are you planning on for color?
Totally open. It won't be pink. Don't worry. I just don't have money to paint my house.
I don't think we have any restrictions on color
Yeah.
in town, but I'm just curious.
I painted the one I just built, kind of a teal, and it's stunning. Teal with a kind of a cream tint. I didn't match my front. The house in front was built in 1890, and I built it in the back on the alley. Not the same color, but it goes well. So I'll be very careful about the color,
I'm sorry. What about the shingles?
It's asphalt shingles. I was thinking possibly if the budget would do it, to do a metal roof. And a lot of these modern type builds, they have metal roofs with slats running down. And it's a really good look. It's incredibly expensive, but I've been considering that. But the proposal right here is just regular shingles.
Any more questions? I too appreciate that you're building a smaller home and you won't be losing any trees, and the use of divided light windows, I think all works well. But I am very concerned about the street presence. And it does really need a window and also the entry is typically facing this street in that neighborhood. And I understand what you're saying about urban housing and in actual urban areas, but it really isn't that sort of shotgun house in the Midland Historic District, really isn't compatible with the massing. So if I could see something else rather than just that narrow, like Matt was saying, it looks like a shed. I think that would really improve the street presence. And also, I'm a little concerned about the parking in front. That isn't typical in that area to have parking in front of the house. I mean, it's usually on the street, but there would actually be space there for you to have a driveway perhaps, and the parking could be toward the back.
Correct, it could be. The current design it's showing 4, even though it would probably be more like 4 or 6 parking spaces, which is great for Manitou. Not everybody whose building can say that. I could actually have additional parking too. So I have access to the parking. It's a flat site. There's a lot of positives to it. And I understand the front door situation, you would prefer it to be in the front. However, it's a long, narrow lot. And you can't have the front door going through a bedroom. The bedrooms are going to be on the side. So that's why the front door is going to be there in the middle of it instead of on the street. So as you can see there, it's a narrow, small, and it will be up against the red line on the right, right up to the variance. So, and that's all just asphalt parking next to it there. So I'm not infringing on anything on the parking lot there. And I will be as close to that line as planning will allow it. And that is the design, no variance requested. And so it will be quite far away from the left red line there. And so. Oh. It's obviously a great location for a rental, even without parking, but I have a lot on the site. Close to mass transit, it's close to everything there. It's walkable, it's close to the library. It's exactly where we could have infill. And I think it's what this town needs is more residential infill. And it's in a desirable area where you can walk to anywhere you need to. I'm not straining city resources or anything by doing that. And I'm certainly not crowding in that. I know Manitou very, very well. And there's a lot of things very crowded in this town on all those side streets. This is not that. This is luxury compared to most of the other addresses in the historic part of Manitou, which are very on top of each other. Lot lines are right on top of each other, and people have no parking and, two-way streets and one lane. We know what Manitou looks like. This really seems to be an ideal place to develop I've had 20 years ago, somebody, the old planning department, Todd Liming said we could build 4 units up there. And he suggested we build 4 units up there. I said, I just don't want to do that. I don't want it to be that dense. I believe in density. This is not density. This is just adding a single family home in a place that it can be added, reasonably priced. It's still going to cost me a lot of money, and many more changes that wouldn't be economically feasible to put a lot here. And then it's just going to be another parking lot in the middle of the city.
I think all of us agree that it's a great use of the lot, and having affordable housing in Manitou is really important. Having this size of housing is really good. I would like to see how you would warm it up to the neighborhood. I think on principle, I absolutely support what you're doing. I think that you need to give a little bit more nod to the character of the neighborhood, of the district. And I know that it's very eclectic. But I think, you know, some of the things we talked about, adding a window, if there is a way to warm up the entrance, I mean, to the point of, you know, the entrance is on the side, that absolutely makes sense with the property, and especially with a rental. If there were two, you know, depending on who lives there, it's a typical setup even for a condo, right? So all of that makes sense. The package is a little bit hard to swallow for the district.
I'm definitely willing to add windows. That is something that would be in the budget, and I think it would change the look tremendously, especially from the street. It would be a nice little window with slats in it, and that's not an issue at all.
Is there a way you could possibly move the parking toward the back? I know that would require making a driveway, but
It would,
it
and
would
I would,
improve the
the
street.
trees to the left right there would be in the way of the driveway. So it would actually, it would right there to the left, see there's a line of trees there. I know you can't see, but there's 3 or 4 trees there, and that's where the driveway would be. So the house is going to be right where those cars are.
Mhm.
And the driveway would be down there, and I guess it would go all the way down. It would create kind of a, you know, 1 lane down there and then 1 lane back. I don't think it would be ideal for parking. It would be actually maybe limiting the parking even more to 1 car if you're going to have it on the side there. But it could possibly be done.
But if this is a single family home,
Correct.
do you need room for 6 cars?
You don't. Absolutely not.
Maybe
Just
2
2,
cars,
probably
or
1
even 1.
Yeah.
or 0. I'd hope 0, but 2 people, 2 cars, realistically.
Sure.
But I'm saying that this actually is in downtown Manitou, and it's going to have about 6 parking spaces, just the way it is, which is pretty unbelievable that we have tenants begging for parking all over Manitou in the historic district here with no parking. So I'm not asking for that variance at all. I know people would love to build in Manitou if they didn't have the parking minimums. So
I think if you could make 1 or 2 parking spots, that would be premium space.
right.
I guess I have a question. It sounds like we've talked about a number of things that could be potentially conditions. Are there more, and the applicant seems to be open to some of them. Are there more questions that we have for the applicant, or do we want to discuss sort of internally?
Really quick, because I was late. The porches.
Yeah.
The small deck planned on the eastern facade, I had got that one. And then the larger deck is featured on the western facade. So could the eastern facade, any of that be changed so that allow for this situation with moving the front door
To the east,
to the east?
flip the whole building. Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Sounds cheap doesn't it? No. But because it just seems like for the 2 deck situation, maybe could any of that be changed?
Yeah, the reason why it's positioned there is because it's to stay away from the other house to the west. And
Understand.
it's building kind of a wall from that mess to the east. I've dealt with that for 25 years now,
Mhm.
my neighbors.
It was just a question.
Right, I'm just saying, and that's just gonna, so that you'll have the house there, and it will be
Mhm.
kind of blocking that a little bit. Still be open, you'll still be able to see it, not putting a fence, not doing anything, but it will be the house will be there. You'll go out to the west. You'll have its own yard there. I think it will be really it will be very nice living for the person. And it will not be changing anything to the east because that's just their parking. So.
And did I understand, this is pertaining to what you're asking? Did I understand earlier that you are not putting in the deck on the east because of
No.
because of
So,
the setback?
There'll be a back door there for egress, obviously, but there'll be no deck back there at all.
How will they
Nothing.
access that door?
Just a step up.
And so there'll be a path along
Viewing
there?
pathway, whatever the variance is, I don't know. I think it's 4 feet. I have to be 4 feet from the property line. So there'll be an open area back there between the parking lot of the apartment building and my building running along it. There'll just be a door going out there instead of building a deck, which would be in the variance area. I'm not asking for any variance. That's what I'm trying to do, is to avoid any kind of problems with this. And that's why I've designed it particularly this way.
If you've noticed, we're trying to help.
I know, that's great. Hey,
Yeah,
whatever
we-
happens, we're,
Really hard to try.
we all got to
come
live here
to
together, and I understand totally.
Medium,
So-
so, okay.
Right. Right, and we realize it's a difficult lot size to work with, but it's just that street presence that's really important in that neighborhood.
Well, but I'll let you converse, but I obviously open for changing. I could change the roof type to make it more visually appealing, that the metal roof will be very visually better than that. That's an upgrade, tremendous upgrade, will cost money, but then more windows, I can add more windows, and that's not an issue at all. So around the building.
Yeah, I think we need to be, again, focused on what our role is, which is how does this fit with the neighborhood and the sub-district that it's in? And shouldn't be trying to, I think, re-engineer the whole thing here. I think if the comments I've heard that I would agree with is, I think a window or two on the street facing side would be compatible with other properties in that area, and that would be advantageous. The parking location does not concern me at all, really, and I'm not sure that's actually totally within our purview. So I think we just need to be kind of focused on, is it compatible with the historic neighborhood? And again, what I heard up to this point is the window treatment, I think, is important, and that would add to its appearance and compatibility in the neighborhood. The rest of it, I'm not sure I agree with. But again, what we probably should do is save our discussion for after we hear comments from the public.
Right.
And come back to that.
What, one really quick little thing though, when did the metal roof come in?
I just mentioned that now,
Okay.
It's not, I don't think.
not on the
No,
plan at all. I'm
it's
just
not.
like brainstorming here at all. So
Asphalt
I'm like,
shingles, right?
Heating, shingle, okay.
yeah, it's shingle,
Okay.
but that's okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And now we can open up for public comment. Is there anyone here who wants to comment on the? Yes. Oh, Erin, can you come forward and state your name and address, please?
I'm Erin Handlin, and I live at 7 Waltham Avenue. But I just had a question about the siding material. Is that going to be solid wood or a lesser quality material? Because I know in the historic district, a lot of the houses have solid wood materials. I know I replaced some siding on my house and I had it custom milled in Denver out of Douglas fir. So I think that's an important question. And then I also I can appreciate the parking situation that he's proposing. Because I think we all struggle with parking in Manitou, and especially with his location. You know, if you invite friends over to attend a parade or something else, it's nice to have that additional parking. And then my last comment was maybe the construction of a garage, maybe that could contribute to the street presence. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you.
So the siding is listed as plywood siding, with the battens being wood as well. The specificity of the type of wood isn't listed. And as for the garage, I can't speak on the entire Midland neighborhood. I know for that street alone, a lot of the houses, don't have garages.
No.
There may be one next to the cottages that has a rear garage, but it was a secondary addition and not a primary on the initial house.
Thank you, Zach. All right, so no more comments from the public, so we
Oh,
can.
I do have one public comment online. Yes, ma'am. With the paper that's in front of you, I do have Elizabeth online. I am going to give you permission to talk. Elizabeth, please let me know. You should be able to speak right now. And if this doesn't work, I'll promote her to panelist and we'll try them. I think that might be our best bet here.
And you are showing up as being muted personally. So if you want to unmute yourself, the unmute button will be in the bottom left of your screen.
Okay, I think she just unmuted.
Hopefully you're able to hear me now. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I listened to all of the comments from the gentleman who is planning to build the new property, and understand, wanting to have a house back there, and that will be a nice rental property for him. And I lived in Manitou for years too, military, so had to move and come back, and now my mom lives in our house in Manitou. It's away in Old Colorado City. So we are still at the house 3 or 4 times a week. And so it's still very important to me that it's, the presence and the characters maintained of the neighborhood as well. And I do understand, the intent of this meeting being more towards the aesthetics, if you will, than the actual functional issues with the property. I will say though that I am still concerned with the parking. I do not the way that the vehicles would be pulling in would be shining, lights right into where the kids' bedroom and master bedroom and stuff are. And so I would be concerned. I think 2 spaces are probably good, and it's the farthest east as you can possibly get with that. I think that's probably the best. So I do think that, there are some issues that I still see with, I'd just like to understand kind of, as we're talking about like potential driveways and other things, what that traffic pattern would actually look like, and, how that would impact things, at my house as well, because, there is a retaining wall that is there, and anything that's, changed, or if there's really, it was never made for vehicular traffic. And so that's why there are issues there right now already, because it's been turned into a parking lot. And so, just some of those other issues that I guess we can address more down the road, as this moves forward or doesn't, into some of the additional planning with the permitting and stuff. So, but yep, I just thank you for allowing comment, and obviously it's important to us, so we'll stay in tune and stay in touch with concerns that we have as we move forward.
Thank you. Is that it? Okay, now we can close public comment section. And commissioners? Would we like to have some discussion before we make a
Sure.
motion?
So, and maybe since parking keeps coming up, Aaron, could you let us know definitively, do we have any say on parking? Is that an aspect that the HPC even should weigh in on?
So there's context where you might, but Fred and Zach jump in if you think I'm wrong. I don't know that in this context, it's being regulated by Title 18. Sorry, parking is regulated by Title 18 in terms of where parking is able to occur. The parking as shown here, doesn't have approvals from like our streets department, which would have to review that because that is a much wider, like it's a formalized wider access, whereas it's being used as an undeveloped lot now. So as a developed lot, it would have to be brought into any conformance with any requirements that they have relative to that interaction between our public roadway and the driveway. So I think and I think one other thing, just kind of from the code, parking dimensions are another requirement in Title 18, which do require a minimum 9-foot width for all parking. The width of that property is 47 feet, according to the site plan. So it would only allow for 5 spots if you're parking them at a 90-degree angle there. I think the other thing we'd have to confirm, if we're backing right into the roadway there, and again, this is Title 18, so these are kind of the things we just have not done yet based on where the parking is.
Right.
Is that road it's one-way traffic, so we'd have to make sure we had enough like the roadway was accommodating of what the required, like it's functioning as the drive aisle for that parking. So those are things we haven't done yet because we typically review those as part of the minor site plan and Title 18.
Right.
Now, if that parking area was proposing concrete, although it appears that they're not, then that would be under the purview of HPC for making sure it's the integral colored concrete that is required in
Right.
HPC. So there's materiality oversight, but a lot of the size and other things come into like safety regulations that we would review with our
Right.
streets
It's just
department.
not in our purview, I think, and we just need to be clear on that.
Mhm.
We don't have a guideline about parking. So
No.
I think, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Mhm.
But sometimes
Okay,
they have to do a traffic study. It
Yeah.
just keeps going.
And I will say, I don't know off the top of my
Yeah,
head if
yeah.
there's any sort of restriction in Title 18 for sort of that 90-degree in parking as a row along a residential. I just don't know off the top of my head, but we would review that as part of the minor site plan.
Mhm. But I think the concern here with the parking is just a matter of design and the setback of the house with parking in front, because that is not typical in the Midland Historic District.
I can't make that statement definitively. It is not a listed character aspect in the district description. So having not inventoried every Midland property myself, I can't say that it is or isn't. But I
Okay.
do believe there are some properties that do have parking in the front yard, essentially.
Yeah, there's one right
Yeah.
up the street, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that our guidelines speak to parking. So I think we're getting a little distracted with that item
Mhm.
because others will deal with the issues that Aaron described. I think what we need to focus on is, again, our main concern is this compatible with the neighborhood and the sub-district?
We didn't talk about lighting, or maybe you guys did when I was not here yet.
We didn't.
We have not.
We used to. We used to talk about how those looked,
Talk about what
lighting
lighting?
and how sometimes the light fixtures and how they look, and make sure that they were down. So the light pollution.
And what,
Create a problem.
Those are things that we review later on. We would make sure that they are following the lighting requirements.
and in
The dark sky, we review for dark sky compliance.
in the renderings, we're just seeing two small sconces
Yeah, I should.
by the entries.
I'm
See
not
that?
up to date.
They're showing it here by the door.
Hmm.
And
So
so
they're
those-
not overwhelming.
those aren't necessarily based on this, they're not shielded from shining out, but we can't tell.
Yeah.
But it's just those two,
But they're not like huge.
right? Not like a big mercury
Okay.
light.
Okay.
Okay, so do we all agree that we just need to see some changes in that street facing elevation?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think what we've heard from pretty much everybody, and the applicant has pretty much said he would do that, is some windows on that front facing facade that is now just a blank wall would enhance the appearance and the compatibility with the historic neighborhood. And I think we would make that a condition of the approval. So,
I want to, I guess, in terms, not disagreeing with that, but potentially open the option of, because there can be a lot of variability in asking for a window, either making the condition more specific, so we're asking for a specific window type that he has shown on the plans to occur just on that one facade, the south facade, or continuing the application until next month's meeting and having him make those corrections so that everybody is visualizing the same window and approval. Because I think if that is a condition, staff would need that specificity so that when we're reviewing it at those subsequent milestones, we can confirm it's compatible with what HPC wanted there. Because if there's a window that's added, not that I'm saying the applicant would, but if the window is added and it's just a one window way up high, that's maybe not what the commission is imagining. So when we're talking about that window, if we can have specificity of it so that there's something to approve against, or continue it so that there's no ambiguity there.
I've put on the screen here, some of the views of the windows if it helps.
Like, which side? I don't know which
To your point, Aaron, I think, I mean, to everybody else on the commission, I think a window similar to the other window that's in the bedroom, maybe that size would open that face that faces the street. And just sort of give it a more, warm, it would warm it up. Short of having there's no ornamentation on the building at all. So I think that having a window similar to that would be the only thing that I could envision right now.
yeah.
So like
and I would
this
agree.
one right here, Matt?
Yeah.
Just so we can be, when we write it up.
Right.
Okay, good.
So a divided light, yeah, with, looks like fake shutters.
Yes, so
Yeah.
for the audio record, we are looking at, divided light. We have 4 divisions across and 3 divisions vertically. It's referencing the window on the southern end on the west side of the building, and that there would be, it would be on the south side as shown here, with the trim, with the shutters, and with the window as defined.
Yeah, that's certainly what I think would be appropriate. Yeah. Is that specific enough, Aaron?
Yes, I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure I was kind of complying with what you guys are
Right.
setting as condition.
Anything else? Do we have a,
So I would be willing to make a motion if we're at that point, and I think we are. I would move for approval of MCAC 2505 as presented, with the change to add a window on the south side of the bedroom that matches the window on whatever side that is, the north side of the bedroom.
The west side.
With
west side,
the west side, sorry, with the divided lights as described by Aaron just a moment ago, and the shutter, the other, what would you call it?
The shutters, like.
Yes, the
Yeah.
shutters.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes 4-0. All right. We can now move on to other business. Hiawatha Gardens.
One moment, I'm going to share my screen here. My my battery is running low, so in the instance that I do lose you guys, I have sent the presentation to Zach, and he'll pull it up if that happens. So for the record, Aaron Ringsred. I introduced myself earlier as Planner Ringsred, but here I'm sitting here as the project manager for Hiawatha Gardens. Just to be clear, moving forward, I will only appear on Hiawatha as the project manager, and Planner Royston will be the planner when producing planning items, presenting planning applications. So tonight serves as an update. I know we've had some updates under council actions for Hiawatha, but I felt it was appropriate to do a more formal presentation. All of the material from the previous council actions is available publicly, but we're going to go through some of those things as well as some very recent, very fresh iterations on the restroom structure, because we've been looking into that design a little bit more. So the purpose of Hiawatha is for short-term parking. So with the redevelopment of this site and the addition of the Dillon into the parking system, that this is seeking to serve users who are visiting the downtown businesses and putting more longer-term parking at the Dillon, where it might be the COG or the Incline, where people will be gone for hours but not patronizing our downtown businesses. So it's really trying to promote more transportation options for residents and visitors to the community. So if someone's not within walking distance to the businesses and their home, they can come here, park, and utilize the downtown, or go to the summer concert. With this, the sort of park once, make multiple stops. We're hoping to reduce traffic congestion in downtown and increase the quality of life for Manitou residents by reducing, that circling that happens when people are trying to find parking on the street in downtown, and eliminate that like pollution, air pollution as well. Secondary uses of the site, we would be having public restrooms that would support not only users of the parking lot, but also having proximity to Memorial Park. So there would be bathrooms on both ends of Memorial Park. Right now, the two that are exterior and available to the public, there's just 2 stalls, at least in the women's restroom. And this would add additional capacity to that, which would help families that are enjoying that park. It's always nice to have a nearby restroom, as well as providing community space in the dance hall and adjacent plaza spaces. Base levels of service that we would be providing here is there'd be 5 women stalls, 5 men stalls, and then 2 family gender neutral stalls for the restroom structure. Of the dance hall, and we'll get into more detail of this, so I do anticipate questions, but the historic trusses, roof, and columns will be retained and restored. There will be additional bike infrastructure there. Right now, we're anticipating 7 lockers and 28 bike racks, but we are working, we'll be presenting to the MAPS board and working with our parking and mobility department to make sure that that quantity matches the use that we could expect there, the volume. That the plaza would be there for community gathering and play. There is phasing anticipated with the project as it's been fully envisioned. The EV chargers, which are on the northwest corner of Hiawatha, will remain in place, and we will have between 105 to 135 parking spaces available. This is dependent on working through all of the land use code requirements for landscaping and things like that and filtration. So that number may tweak over the life of the project as we work through that in greater detail. The dance hall will be renovated to support community gatherings. It is important to note that we completed and presented concept design to council and were approved to move forward with that through contracts earlier this year. But we are just starting schematic design now. So it is a pretty preliminary design phase. We don't have construction documents or that level of detail. We're looking at space planning and starting to talk about materials, but don't have that like exactly detailed out yet. So this was the option as presented and selected by City Council in December of 2024. This change from an enclosed pavilion to an open air pavilion was a reflection of costs as well as costs related to the floodplain. So although there are historic exceptions for buildings in the floodplain, there were some serious life safety issues with that building remaining as a closed-sided structure or being rehabilitated as a more permanent closed-sided structure in the floodplain that would have required significant floodplain improvements that would have impacted Memorial Park. And so with those sort of factors being weighed in, pros and cons, the open air pavilion was the decided method of preservation to move forward with the dance hall. One option that is being considered as we move through the design exercise and costing exercises is the potential to have these more seasonal drop down cloths here on the exterior. There are other pavilions that utilize this to extend the use of the pavilion into the shoulder seasons. However, they wouldn't be effective if there was a foot of snow on the ground in December and making the building comfortable. It'd be more like extending use into October, that sort of thing. It would require mechanical systems being included in the project. So that's where there's kind of 2 additional costs. If we chose to add, it would be for the conditioning, as well as the drop down structures themselves. And that would allow us to be in compliance with floodplain code because we wouldn't be creating that solid face for the water pressure to move against. So we have looked at a couple of different designs for the restroom structure. With the consultant that we're working with, we have directed them to the Historic District Design Guidelines and have stressed that this property is within a historic subdistrict and must be considerate of those requirements and the context that it's within. I would say this is the front runner of the restroom structure right now. For those of you who are familiar with the restrooms that were previously proposed when it was going to be enclosed structure, this is the same volume of restrooms, and it would be the same volume of storage. Things that are smaller than that bar is that we would no longer have like an enclosed meeting space in here. We would no longer have a catering kitchen in here, but there would be storage and the ability to have some janitorial mechanical use in this mass as shown. The architect was taking cues from the pitch of the dance hall, wanting it to be subservient to that per the design guidelines, as well as having, a truss system sort of exposed structural support that is a nod, but not a duplication. It's a slightly modernized version to differentiate that. You can see on the bottom of that it does show kind of some sculptures there. Those are placeholders only. We just see this facade or this face of the building as an art opportunity to partner with Crane on. There are some limitations with any rendering software. So they are showing stone there. It would be intended that we would use a stone that as closely as possible mimics some of the Manitou greenstone, and the plaza and pavement materials and pavers, those are by no means finalized. They're just a placeholder. This would be the north view of that restroom. They're proposing a ramp that would connect El Paso to the restroom structure, which I think has some benefits in terms of someone who is needing, especially needing a ramp to move around. We only have stairs on the north side of El Paso. If you needed something other than stairs, you'd have to use the drive aisle, which is obviously prone to a lot of conflict. So I think there's some assets to this ramp proposal for increased accessibility of the site. This is a little more of an aerial that shows the context and that placement of the restroom structure to the dance hall. The restroom structure does look a little bit bigger just because it's in the foreground, but it is comparable to height, if not, I think a little bit smaller than the dance hall. And then there was an additional option that, again, was taking a nod from the pitch of the gables of the dance hall, but proposing sort of separating those uses into two different buildings that face each other. And again, these are very preliminary, so some things might change, but this was another option proposed to us as part of the SD process. What our initial feedback as staff was we felt that the first option was greater compliance with design guidelines for historic district and was a better complement and was more subservient to the dance hall. And that is the direction that has been given as of yesterday. However, we wanted to, since this is so close to it, we wanted to just kind of confirm that that was also this body's gut reaction, was that first one feels more in line and in compliance with historic district design guidelines. I mentioned earlier, this is where are we in the design process? Once the diagram was first made, we had just completed concept design. Right now we're in schematic design. So we're at a pretty preliminary level. We are really shaping the design now. And we would anticipate bringing this back to, right now where we have it plugged into the schedule is we bring this back to HPC when we get kind of like what was done with the library, was it was brought through at the same time as it went through the major development plan as well. So right now that is being targeted for October of this year. So there'll be additional presentations to council in that time as part of continuing to move through the design process. And like I said, we'll be working with MAPS on the transportation elements as well as different city departments. But I wanted to provide an update to this commission tonight because there is a change to the year ago when I presented Hiawatha last, with going from an enclosed structure to an open air structure because of those floodplain limitations. One thing that hasn't been decided yet is due to the structural requirements, the wooden flooring in Hiawatha can't remain there for it to be restored. So we are open to suggestions on when that is salvaged, what would be some good uses to preserve it, but unfortunately we can't preserve it in place due to the structural needs. Sorry, I forgot I had one more slide. So here is the municipal review process for Hiawatha. There is the material change of appearance certification, which will come here in front of historic preservation, but there will also be a major development plan, a major subdivision plan, and rezoning, as well as a grading permit that will be required. One item that we were discussing is that there is going to be a partial demo with the removal of those temporary walls and the floor. So that's something we'll discuss as a partial demolition under the code. Now my question slide.
So maybe we can start there. So you're saying that you're going to deal with the changes to the dance hall as a partial demolition? Is that right?
This is maybe a preliminary, but since I had you guys tonight, I wanted to discuss it with you as a full body. So right now, there's waterproofing around the structure after those additions were removed. When we start construction, we would be removing those walls and not putting them back. So that is one thing that could be considered demolition because we're taking something away and not returning it. And the same is true for the wood flooring. Is that will not be going back in place because in order to reinforce and meet with floodplain requirements for preserving the columns and the structural trusses in those and that it would be exposed to the elements, that would also be going away and not coming back in the exact same form that it is there now, which does it would be considered, I believe, a partial demolition under the code because it is not a complete demolition under the code.
Right.
Because we are retaining a lot of the key character elements that were identified in the earlier plans, which is the overhead structure, the above ground structure. The wood flooring was the other item that was identified as part of that. And so that's why I wanted to bring your attention to it this evening, is that was one of the other character elements. There was some significant damage to the wood floor as part of the previous use as a bar. So prior to the city having retained possession of the building. So there is a lot of water damage on a portion of that floor. Just for those of you who haven't been there in the last month like I have. So those are a couple of just things to make you guys aware of.
Yeah, I think it's a bit tricky. I don't think we've ever done a partial demolition the whole time I've been on the commission. So that raises a number of questions, but I'm assuming you also potentially will be going to the state for grants as a historic, because this, at the moment, this is deemed a contributing structure in the historic district. So I think it's going to be an important feature because when we started down this track some many years ago, we were looking at a specific time frame in its history when it was partially enclosed. There is an older time frame when it was totally open, when it was an open pavilion. So I think you're going to need to build an argument about what point in its history you're looking to, in effect, restore it, rehabilitate it to. And that may eliminate the need for the partial demolition. But something we'll have to think through, I think. This is not an ordinary.
I'd say the closest comparable we've had to a partial demolition is when 140, 144 Ruxton did have to remove portions of the structures for a variety of reasons. Partial demolitions are defined under the code as an administrative approval. However, in an effort to be completely transparent on that property as an example, which would be my intention here on Hiawatha, is that we brought it forward as part of the MCAC to sort of make you aware of what our recommendation was and say, yes, this is approved in sort of accordance with the MCAC. And that was the process that we worked through with the code to make that possible.
Those are those two houses.
Yes.
Here, right. Okay.
Yeah, there were some later additions that were added that weren't original to the time period that property owner was restoring it to. So, yes, that is correct. We do intend to pursue grants for historic if there are grants available.
Right. So what we'll see in October will just be the restrooms. Is that right?
No.
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 Okay.
October, it would be our intention to bring everything that is under HPC's purview to HPC at one time.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
from a structural standpoint, that would include changes to the dance hall and the restroom.
Okay.
As I said, this is really still very preliminary, and I am by no means a structural engineer. So it is something that it's early enough in the schedule that if we wanted to bring it back earlier than October for additional discussion as we had some more details worked out, that is something that we, could do from a project manager perspective.
Right.
It wouldn't be brought back earlier as a planning application. If
Got
that makes sense. I'm kind of trying to take one hat off.
Right.
Okay. Walk this with me, okay? This is not a living space. This is a commercial spot. It's below the floodplain, hence why the walls are coming down. I am very confused on that part because I know very soon you're going to have a development coming to you very similar to this. And they're going to be asking these questions exactly like I'm doing. If the living space is above it and things are below it, why do I have to have everything open?
So there's multiple parts to this. And again, I am not an architect or a structural engineer. But when we're looking at the floodplain, there's a couple of things that needed to be done in terms of either opportunity to reinforce the structure as is, which would have had some significant detrimental impacts to.
Because it has a basement, right?
Yes.
Ish.
Mm-hmm. To the queen. So right now, as the building was existing structurally, if we built, which we would be improving it, crossing different thresholds that are in the floodplain code, we would have to bring it up to current life safety codes, which it is not at.
Right.
And one of the things that the engineers, evaluated was how much hydrostatic pressure in a flooding condition would be applied to the west side of that structure.
Because it sits so low
Yes.
compared to.
Yes. And so it is, I think, about 2 feet below the floodplain, give or take. I don't have my numbers in front of me, so
Right.
estimates. And so if you have 2 feet or more of like water, there's certain thresholds that they're measuring against. How much pressure is that?
Right.
And so when they're measuring that pressure, okay, well, how do we brace against that? If we brace against that, what does that start to look as a structural experience on the inside? Because those Queen Anne trusses were one of the more distinct items at the time of the structure, and more unique in terms of regionally. And what was recommended, or what was, in order to get to that safety, there would be a lot of additional structural items required in the roof. That would be very visible because it is such an open structural element, which would be detrimental. It would be a lot of extreme additional cost at that time as well. And so that option, as well as the floodplain adjustment option, because we looked at what if we took it out of the floodplain so that we didn't have to reinforce it in that way and take away from the historic character of it. And between those two options, we went further with that floodplain option to vet how could we make this work, because it would have some other benefits to the site as a whole. But the cost would have nearly doubled the project as a whole. And so that was just not something that was determined as the best course of action when weighing all the different needs of funding for the city.
Okay. Thank you for entertaining me.
Yes, and there, I could send you a link to the council presentation where our architect went through it, because he's going to use more technical language, and then there was supporting documents for it. So I can share it with you. That's my best sort of recollection, knowing that presentation was made 9 months ago. So I know I'm not getting that perfectly
I'm a
right.
bit of a nerd on that stuff.
Okay,
So
so
it'd be
I'll
awesome.
send it to you. Yeah.
Thanks.
And maybe just one additional question. My recollection is that even as an open air pavilion, it will need structural reinforcement. Is that not correct?
I can verify that.
Okay.
I'd have to review the structural narrative. I think it's going to be a very sensitive process, right? To make sure that as things are removed from that building, the building is being held up and in place as they need to reinforce the foundation underneath it.
Right.
So there is a lot in the structural realm that's still being tested and worked out. There was not, to my knowledge, any structural reinforcement that would have been as visible as the option to withstand the
Right,
floods.
right.
But that is something I can double check with and just re-ask that question of this
Okay.
structural engineer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Does anyone else have any questions for Erin?
I guess I do. When you're talking about removing the flooring and you propose maybe we would have some thoughts in reusing that, in what context? I mean, another project, or is there another part of this project where it could be used or reused?
So I can't make any commitments at this time. And I'm not expecting you to have just a plethora of ideas on the spot. So feel free to email me as you mull it over. I am not sure what quantity of flooring when removed will be, reusable, just with some of those different, weathering implications. Some items that we've discussed, like internally when we've been brainstorming, was the possibility of reuse, on the property. Is there a way to use it as like a wall face in the restroom structure? We wouldn't want to use it on the floor for obvious reasons. But would there be something in those spaces that could be a reuse to reuse it on the property? Could it be used? And again, not an architect. We were like, what if we used it for some of the underside of any of the exposed roof in that area? Could it be utilized in that way, where if it's on the underside, it's not going to be, the water would never be sitting on it. It would still be exposed, but we could maybe seal it in such a way like you do with other types of wood on an exterior. Those were options discussed. We didn't discuss any uses off property. Not to say that that would be a no. And all of this is obviously, budget contingent. What can we make happen within the money that we have right now? So yeah, but yeah, so if there's anything you can think of after the fact, please let me know. Those are the kinds of, I just wanted to we're early enough in the design process that there's more flexibility in feedback for things like this, not for moving the restroom to another part of the property, for example, but as we get into some of these more nuanced details, just having your feedback to be sort of aggregated with some of the other groups that we're speaking with.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering about. I think when you asked that, the first thing I thought was, could it be used on the underside of the roof or the ceiling?
Yeah.
Some feature on the property. I don't know what you would do in the restroom with it, but if it was in a pavilion, maybe that would work. I don't know what the ceiling is currently in the pavilion.
The ceiling is wood paneling in
It
the
is wood.
pavilion.
Yeah, it's actually historic kind of
Yeah.
wainscoting.
better
No,
one,
I
thank
don't
you.
think you would want to replace that. That's part of the historic
Yes.
feature of the structure as it exists.
So if, when the property was an open air pavilion years ago, I'm presuming it did not have a wood floor.
No, it did not. No,
Was it concrete, dirt?
I
What-
suspect it was concrete. Yeah. I mean, there are some old pictures. This was like back at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely not wood. Definitely not. Yeah.
I did have just one kind of final follow-up question for the commission is this restroom option shown on the screen that we're planning to move forward with. when we look at this from like a massing roof pitch perspective, like gut reaction, do you feel like we're heading in the right direction with this?
Yeah, I definitely think that's better than the option 2. Yeah.
I agree. That fits in well.
And I had one more question about materiality. This is obviously a pretty high level like rendering in that there's high level, not as in highly detailed, but that we're still looking at the design in a preliminary perspective. So that material that is more or less white on the side of the building hasn't been defined. As I mentioned earlier, one of my gut reactions when looking at this is, and this has not been confirmed with Crane yet, but this would be an opportunity to partner with them for a mural potentially on this side. With that being said, what materials are conducive to a mural might differ than maybe a typical like siding or something like that, but maybe more similar to some of the like downtown buildings that we've see have those. I don't know if it's all stucco or what is that material. Is that something that we'd be open to? I know stucco is not typical for most of our zone districts, but if it was there to be utilized as a base for a mural, is that something that we could entertain, or other materials like that that could receive a mural more readily?
Yeah, my recollection is that the walls on the enclosed dance hall were stucco.
Okay, I
Right?
couldn't remember, so I'm
I
glad
believe
you
so.
remember.
Yeah, I believe I mean, you can check back on that, but I think they were. So I think stucco is very appropriate, frankly.
Thank you. Any other questions while I'm here? All right. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
Let's see, we can move on to our discussion about when to do our chapter 17 discussion, or whether or not we need a workshop. Fred, did you have any ideas or input?
Yeah, I think first of all, I didn't know if the HPC had any thoughts. Laura, I know you had wanted to put it on the agenda, at least for discussion. So what I can do is kind of provide an update on what's been going on, which hasn't been very much since the last time HPC discussed this, which was actually back in September, believe it or not, of last year. And I can talk a little bit about maybe the process moving forward. From the staff level, there has been a little bit of a delay, but we've been completing quite a few big projects during this time, and so it's a matter of staff time in getting here. But what we did is in the packet we provide. I went back and listened to the recording of the September meeting and wrote down all of the items that HPC had that they wanted to review in a potential amendment or revision to Title 17. And so that's what you have in the packet. And we can put it up on the screen too if you would like. I'm happy to, I don't know what thoughts you have right now. We could go through that list today. We could talk about any other items that you want to talk about. We could maybe talk a little bit about, what's our, do we have goals? What's the overall goal, or what are we trying to do in making amendments to Title 17? Try to look at the big picture. We can, or the staff can also try to put all of this in a put all of this in a staff report and do a later working session if you would like.
Mhm. Does everyone feel that a working session would be appropriate later on? I mean, this is quite a list here, I think, to tackle
Yeah,
at a meeting. So,
I guess I would be interested in some more discussion about process. For example, have we considered, or do we have a budget that would allow us to bring in historic preservation specialists like we used for the survey we did a couple years ago, who might have some good perspective on what other historic preservation ordinances, how they may, for example, approach economic hardship, for example. I mean, do we have that capability or not? Is this intended to be all staff and HPC?
So we've got limited capability. I had to do a little bit of budget slashing recently with with the budget. So we don't have as much capability as I thought we did when we approved the budget
Yeah.
last year. We do have some, and it probably depends on, I think it would depend on who we get or where we find somebody. So if we're looking for a private consultant or a private individual, that's going to cost more. I might be able to get somebody from the state historic preservation office. We are, because we are a certified local government, we have more access to their resources. And so I can look and see if they maybe they can provide some guidance and see what's available. State Historic Preservation Office has a model ordinance, and I've been taking a look at it. That would be some good resource to have. Actually, I was looking at it, and there were some things that I think some things in that ordinance that's very similar to what we already have in our ordinance. So I can take a look and see what's available. Probably, so there's limited ability.
Right. I think it would be helpful because some of this is fairly complex. And my impression when I spent more time looking at Chapter 17 is that when it was created, it looks like they went to some other ordinance and just took out sections because a number of them don't fit together really very well. And the economic hardship is one of them, I think. But I think it would be helpful if a little outside perspective might be really helpful if we can acquire that without expense, without great expense.
I agree. The outside perspective from a professional from History Colorado, and also they would have a structure to work with, and I think it would be more efficient, much more efficient to do that if we can.
Okay, so let me do some homework and see what we can scrounge up and put something together for a future working session. And I agree. I don't want this to lag too long. I know that this is one of HPC's goals for 2025. This is one of the planning department's goals for 2025. We are, like I said, we finished some fairly big ticket items recently, and right now I'm diving into some code revisions to Section 18 that Planning Commission wants to look at regarding legislation that the state had passed, housing legislation. I'm sure you all might have heard about it regarding accessory dwelling units and things like that. So that's a big thing that we need to tackle too. But this is very important. Title 17 is very important, and we want to get going on it.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks. Any more old business? Or other business? Okay, I guess it's 7:15 and we're adjourned. What- What-
Have a good night, everyone. At some point, I'll have some great legal advice for you, but everybody covered all the important stuff. I had nothing to say.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us.
Absolutely. And Fred, I'm going to take a look and see if I can pull up maybe some historic preservation ordinances or regulations that other clients of ours like that are simple and easy to apply. So I'll see if I can get you something just to look at too.
That would be great. I appreciate that.
Sure thing. All right. Have a good night, everybody.